Hey guys, I'm a Dimension Jumper, and when this video is released, it will be the 1 year anniversary of The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Now, it's kind of crazy to think about because this is obviously the sequel to Breath of the Wild, which was in long time development, and when it was released, it became really successful. And I think Tears of the Kingdom was able to not only carry the torch in a sort of sense of where Breath of the Wild left, and kind of ran with it in the sense that it continued the story of that world, and not only the story but also elements like the dungeons, the overworld itself. It got some new areas, mainly the Sky Islands and the Depths, and as well as the dungeons, and I think that's really interesting. And this video is just mainly just going to be me talking about like how the game sort of well, basically my thoughts and my thoughts on the game as a whole, and on how the game was able to fix some stuff from Breath of the Wild, and also some things that I didn't personally find fun or stuff like that, in terms of like where the game kind of fumbled a bit in that sort of sense. So yeah, so to start off with is how Tears of the Kingdom was able to expand the overworld, in the sense that not only did Hyrule get the addition of caves, which we haven't seen since Twilight Princess, but we also got Sky Islands and Depths. Now, all three of these new exploration variants are really useful and really fun to go around in. For instance, with the caves, you can find chests, shrines, blue pools, enemies to fight if you want to collect certain materials to upgrade armor sets and stuff like that. With the Sky Islands, you can find the shrines, some boss-based enemies or mini roaming boss enemies like the Gleeoks, the constructs, and you can also collect the sky. No, that's not the sky armor. The glide armor, which is possibly the most useful armor in the game when it comes to exploration, because if you upgrade it to level 2 and onwards, you'll be given the bonus ability of full nullification, in the sense that you won't take damage if you hit the ground at a specific height. So if, let's say, I had the glide armor on and they were all level 2 in defense, and I glided from, let's say, one of the Sky Islands to Hyrule Castle, let's say, and I hit the ground, I wouldn't take full damage, which is really, I think, a really useful ability, because the amount of times I was gliding in either Tears of the Kingdom or Breath of the Wild, and I would just run out of stamina or let go at the wrong time, and I would just take a lot of damage and stuff like that. So the glide armor is really useful. And with the Depths, it's basically a mirror image to Hyrule. So, for example, all of the mountains are now valleys, which I think is a really interesting way of exploring Hyrule, but from a mirror image. So it's kind of like a swap. So like, just basically take away all the top layer, and you're left with what remains, in a sort of sense. It's how I see it. And the Depths is a really interesting way to explore, because when you first enter the Depths, it's completely dark. You can't really see anything apart from a few campfires if you do the depth quest when you first enter Lookout Landing, and you'll obviously see the light routes. Now, what I like about the light routes is that they are each of the light routes that you find are underneath their own shrine, that can be found on Hyrule. And I think this is a really useful way of finding the shrines, because in Breath of the Wild you had the shrine sensor, and it does return in the game, but you can only access it after defeating one of the dungeon bosses. So having the whole light root shrine being on top of each other is probably a lot more useful, because you can just go to a shrine or light root, and then once you've beaten it, just go to either Hyrule or the Depths map and just put a pin there, and then you can go to that location at another date. And that's really, really useful. And also, the Depths also has its own armor, that being the minor or the minier armor, which is the armor that has like the different lamps on part of the armor. And similar to how the glide armor for when it comes to exploration across the sky has its own ability, the minier or the minor, depends on who you ask, I suppose, when it comes to that particular armor, has its own ability, that being, if you upgrade it to level 2 defense, you'll have every step or every other step you take will have a sort of light effect. So it'll be like every step you'll see like a sort of small bit of light, which again is really useful for exploration in the depths, because you can kind of see where you were coming from, and you can just retrace your steps and go in another direction that you might have not gone to. It's useful, but it does show a bit of light. It's just a quite a good amount of light, but it's not as much. And I think the light roots and the bright bulbs are a bit more useful when it comes to exploring the depths. So yeah. And the only thing, well, one of the things that I'm not a huge fan of when it comes to the Sky Islands is that with the Sky Islands, there could have been a lot more stuff to add in there, because the only huge island that has been inhabited or has had people there is the Great Sky Island, and we can kind of see people living there, but because of the memories in the game, which I do quite like, because you do get to see Sonia, Raru, Zelda's Minaru, and several other Hylians, and yeah, and I think there could have been a whole lot more like things to add in there, like when it comes to Sky Islands, like if we include the Great Sky Islands, there could have been another huge island, but this could be for some Zonai researchers that happen to find a particular island that's somewhat inhabited. So like it could go to something similar, like how in the Great Calamity happened in Breath of the Wild, there was some settlements around Hyrule that were sort of destroyed, and this could be something similar with Sky Islands, where like there was some potential of like, oh, there are other Zonai members here, or this is where the Hylians took refuge, like in the time before the Sky Islands became the Sky Islands, or something similar to that. So yeah, I think that's one of the missed potentials with the Sky Islands. And with the depths I would say are fun. I don't know how to put this, because the depths, I do enjoy the depths. I think it's just, if you're a first time player of a Zelda game and you do get to play through Tears of the Kingdom, I would say it can be quite difficult if you're playing through the depths for the first time, because all of the enemies that you encounter, as soon as they hit you, and as soon as a heart has been taken out, you can't really recover health until you regain your health. So the depths is fun. I do enjoy the depths. I recommend anyone who has played the game or is new to the game to explore the depths. I would say try and explore the depths So basically when you're more well known with the game. So when it comes to with the combat, and when it comes to how the game works, that sort of stuff. So yeah, another thing that I did quite like in the game is the dungeons. Now the dungeons, one of the things I did like about them is that they were heavily improved over Breath of the Wild, because with Breath of the Wild, I did enjoy the Divine Beasts. I think they were fine. I think they were fun. I did enjoy how you could access or get into each one and fight the particular bosses. With the dungeons in Breath of the Wild, they did feel pretty much the same, except with the palette swap, as well as you having to hear the same messages over and over again of, oh, having to access the terminals, having to fight a different part of Calamity Ganon, but it's got a different element, that sort of thing. But with the dungeons, I did really enjoy, well, in the dungeons in Tears of the Kingdom, I did really enjoy how you could access them, and how they were very much different when it comes to their layout, when it comes to Breath of the Wild. Because if you look at something like the Lightning Temple, for example, and compare it to Naboris, those two dungeons are very much different, because with Naboris it's basically just a giant camel that can use electricity-based powers, but with the Lightning Temple it's more of a Indiana Jones inspired looking temple, and it's got several booby traps, like you've got flaming boulders rolling towards you, you've got spiked walls that can jab out at you, and for when it comes to accessing the boss room, you have to use the lightning powers of Riju to basically hit the different terminal pedestal things in order to access the lift to take you up to the boss room. And I think that's what makes the dungeons really more better, and as well as the bosses are a lot more fun to fight. You've got Colgera, you've got Queen Gibdo, you've got the Moktarok, you've got Goma, or a version of Goma that we haven't seen before, that being a giant spider-like, or a giant spider that's basically made out of rocks and marble. And that's really cool and interesting, because it's taking an old boss and just changing it a bit. The only disappointment when it comes to the dungeons is probably the quest layout, that being activate the full terminals again, similar to Breath of the Wild when it came to the Divine Beast, that being, oh, just activate the dungeon terminals again and you'll make it to the boss. And the only boss that I wasn't a huge fan of, as much as when you compare to the other bosses in the game, in terms of the main four, if we exclude the secret one, which I'm not gonna go into too much detail, but because I want people to, if you're new to the game, to experience that for themselves. So when it comes to the bosses, the main four dungeon bosses, the only boss that I wasn't a huge fan of was the Queen Gibdo, because I thought it was going to be a mini boss fight, in the sense that how you fought the sludge-like before the water temple, and I thought it was going to be like that with Queen Gibdo, but she was the mini boss, but also the main boss. And yeah, and I was half expecting Twin Rover to make some sort of appearance, because they are the mothers of Ganondorf, and they are connected to the Gerudo in some way, and so they have that fundamental link with the Gerudo. So I thought, oh, we're going to get some form of Twin Rover maybe. But with Queen Gibdo, I'm happy it's in the game. I had fun fighting it. I think I was expecting a bit too much with the game. And also, I want to give big props to the water dungeon, or the water temple, because the water temple is probably the best water temple we've ever had since probably the Ancient Cistern. And I know it's like, in terms of games, it's not that much, because the Skyward Sword was only 2 games before Tears of the Kingdom, which isn't a lot in terms of games, but it is a lot in terms of when they were released. Because with the Water Temple, I enjoyed the anti-gravity puzzles. and some of the other puzzles, like you have to use electricity to move or to get to a terminal thing, but you have to connect it with water, and that transfers the electricity over to where the terminal is, so you can use Sidon's ability to activate it. Or there's like water, there's like fire coming from the ceiling, and again you have to use Sidon's ability to walk through it, or unless you have the Gorn armor and you've already upgraded it to be fireproof. So yeah, and yeah, this is probably my favourite water temple, and that's saying a lot because water temple or water dungeons in Zelda games aren't really considered the best because it's water physics, and when it comes to infamous water temples, the water temple in Ocarina of Time and maybe even Twilight Princess are quite bad because those two temples are well known for getting players lost and kind of being really confusing when it comes to its dungeon layouts and stuff like that. So yeah, this is probably the best water temple we've seen in Tears of the Kingdom. So yeah, so to end on, I think Tears of the Kingdom is a huge improvement over Breath of the Wild because it's managed to take a lot of things that that Breath of the Wild had, and Tears of the Kingdom managed to fix it. So it fixes stuff from the dungeons, the amount of side quests and shrine quests you can do, and it adds a new thing, that being adventures or side adventures. And with those ones, they kind of add more stuff to the world. For instance, one of the side adventures answers a question from Breath of the Wild, that being, where did Master Koga go after you beat him in the Yiga hideout in Breath of the Wild. And the dungeons are another huge improvement. I do enjoy how each one has their own unique, more of a unique theme, and not just the same beast but with a different layout. And I do enjoy a lot of the dungeons, and yeah, and when it comes to the next 3D Zelda game, it could answer, or we don't really know what the next big 3D Zelda game will look like. Will it take elements from Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom, or will it take elements from other 3D games like Skyward Sword, Ocarina of Time, Twilight Princess, or will it be more of a combination of the two? Because it's really hard to see it that far into the future, because Tears of the Kingdom is still, it's not new when it was originally released, but it's still relatively new in the, I would say, in the public zeitgeist, in the sense that it's still new, people are still playing it, and we don't really know when the next game will be. So if there is going to be another Zelda game to tie us over from Tears of the Kingdom to the next big 3D Zelda game, then it might be just a small 2D game, or a remaster of a 2D game, or it could be a new 2D game, then a remaster of an old game, or an old 2D game, and then we get the next big 3D Zelda game, and it has all of these, a lot of these elements, like a big open world that we can tackle in any order when it comes to the dungeons. It could have some linear parts, like it could be like, okay, you've defeated a dungeon, now go to this area to talk to another person to figure out where the other dungeons are, that sort of thing. So yeah, I am really interested in what the new game will be like, and that sort of stuff. So yeah, so that's been me talking about Tears of the Kingdom, and just my thoughts on my thoughts on it a year later. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.